Okay, so are you ready to dive into season 1 of Evil?
I am. I am.
Buckle up because this show is seriously wild.
Yeah, it really makes you think about like the nature of good and evil.
Right, and whether everything can be explained by science or is there something more supernatural going on?
Exactly like in that very first scene in the courtroom where Kristen is evaluating a serial killer and he suddenly claims to be possessed.
I know, talk about a creepy opening.
That scene sets the tone for the whole season.
Totally. It makes you question everything.
Like what's real, what's in our heads, and what might be lurking in the shadows.
And spoiler alert, things get seriously intense from there.
Absolutely. So let's start with Kristen Bouchard, our main character.
Right, she's a forensic psychologist.
Yeah, and in the beginning, she's working for the DA's office, analyzing criminals, trying to figure out what makes them tick.
But then she loses her job.
Right, and she gets this really strange offer.
From David Acosta, a priest in training.
He wants her to join this team that investigates weird, unexplained events for the Catholic Church.
Yeah, talk about a career change.
I mean, it's such a brilliant setup because you have Kristen the scientist and David the believer.
Constantly challenging each other's perspectives.
Right, and then you've got Ben the tech expert, who's also pretty skeptical, rounding out their team.
It's the perfect trio for tackling these cases.
Every case they take on becomes this tug of war between faith and reason.
Totally making you wonder who's right and if there's even a clear answer.
Like, remember Naomi Clark?
The woman who seemingly comes back to life during her autopsy.
Yeah, that case had everyone on edge, wondering if it was a miracle, a medical error, or something even more sinister.
Right. It makes you think about how things can go wrong, even in places like hospitals where we're supposed to be safe.
And it also touched upon how racism can play a role in how people are treated.
Like with Naomi's concerns being dismissed before her death.
Exactly. It's a reminder to pay attention and speak up when we see something wrong.
Then there's Byron Duke, the famous Broadway producer who's convinced he made a deal with a demon for a Tony Award.
Oh yeah, he's got all this tech in his house and weird things start happening.
Making him believe he's being haunted by this demon named Joe.
That case really highlighted how technology can blur the lines between reality and illusion.
Right. Ben and Kristen suspected that someone was using tech to mess with Duke.
Maybe even as a prank. But David was open to the possibility of actual demonic influence.
It's scary to think about how easily we can be manipulated, especially with all the technology around us today.
It really is. And then there's the case of Eric, that 9-year-old boy everyone thinks is possessed.
He's drawing these disturbing pictures, talking in a weird voice, and just acting really creepy.
It's a tough one because you have Kristen with her psychology background thinking maybe Eric has a mental health issue.
Maybe even something like psychopathy.
But David sees signs of demonic possession.
And to make things even creepier, there's this augmented reality game called Rose 390 that Eric's obsessed with.
And it seems to be influencing his behavior.
It's disturbing to think about how games and technology can affect kids, especially when they're vulnerable.
Especially when you consider that those creepy AR headsets were a gift from Kristen's own mom to her daughters.
Right, that added a whole other layer of unsettling to the story.
Speaking of unsettling, we can't forget the exorcism of Caroline Hopkins.
Oh yeah, she's showing all these signs that could point to either schizophrenia or demonic possession.
It's really hard to tell what's going on.
That case really made me think about how hard it must be to deal with mental illness.
And how sometimes people might look for explanations outside of science or medicine when they're struggling.
Right. It also showed how an exorcism, even if it's done with good intentions, can have a powerful impact on someone.
Whether it's positive or negative. Then we have Graceling.
This woman who shows up claiming to have divine prophecies.
And they're pretty intense, talking about the fate of the world and even threatening the church.
David's trying to figure out if she's legit or just a really good con artist.
Makes you wonder how much of what we believe is based on faith and how much is based on what we can actually prove.
And then there's Leland Townsend, the psychologist, who becomes the show's main villain.
Oh yeah, he's smart, manipulative, and seems to enjoy making people do bad things.
Plus, he's got this creepy connection to that demonic sigil that keeps showing up.
When we find out that the sigil is even in David's father's artwork, it adds this whole other layer of mystery.
It makes you wonder if evil is somehow connected to both David and Leland's pasts.
Like a family heirloom of evil.
Exactly. And speaking of families, things get pretty complicated for David.
He's struggling with his commitment to the priesthood, and he has feelings for Renee Harris.
Who's the church's lawyer? But here's the twist.
She's also his deceased fiance's sister.
Talk about a tough situation.
Especially for someone trying to devote their life to God, it shows that even the most devout people have human desires and weaknesses.
And sometimes those desires can clash with their beliefs. We can't forget about Ben.
He starts the season as this total skeptic,
But then weird things start happening to him, too. He meets Vanessa.
who believes that her deceased sister is somehow still a part of her.
Like literally grafted to her body.
I mean, that's some next-level stuff right there.
Ben's journey is all about challenging what we think we know.
He wants to find a scientific explanation for everything.
But his relationship with Vanessa forces him to confront the possibility that some things might be beyond our understanding.
It makes you think about how much we're willing to accept when it comes to love and the people we care about. And then there's Kristen's mom, Cheryl.
She's a wild card.
At first, she seems like a normal, supportive mom.
But then she starts getting involved with Leland, even though everyone knows how dangerous he is.
And she even encourages Kristen's daughter, Lexi, to do some questionable things.
Like getting revenge on a bully.
Cheryl's character shows how easily we can be drawn to charismatic, manipulative people, even when we know better.
Remember that creepy Halloween episode with the masked stranger, Brenda?
She just appears out of nowhere, freaks everyone out, and then vanishes.
Was she a real person, a demon, or just some elaborate prank?
It's never really explained, which makes it even creepier.
That episode was all about atmosphere and unsettling imagery, playing on our fears of the unknown.
That reminds us that sometimes the most frightening things are the ones we can't explain.
We have to talk about David's visions. He starts having these vivid dreams and seeing things that seem to have a deeper meaning.
He even buys those hallucinogenic mushrooms to try to connect with the divine.
That whole experience was wild, with him seeing his enslaved ancestor, Annie Commerce.
And uncovering a connection to the famous painting Salvator Mundi.
Those visions added a whole spiritual dimension to the show.
They showed that David's search for truth goes beyond just traditional religion.
And into this deeper realm of personal experience.
And we can't forget the way those visions connected to his father's artwork.
And the puzzle that pointed to a convergence spot near New York City.
What's going on there? Is it a portal? A source of power?
It's like a treasure map leading to something important.
And then there's the root ritual with David's stepmother,
where both Kristen and David accidentally get dosed with psychedelic sangria.
Kristen's vision of his stepmother giving birth to a demonic larva was disturbing.
One of the most disturbing images of the whole season.
Seriously, what was that all about? Was it real? A metaphor? Just a bad trip?
It definitely leaves a lasting impression.
And
let's not forget about that terrifying nurse, Linda Block.
who was stealing wristbands from black patients.
That was a chilling reminder that evil can exist in everyday life.
In people who might seem ordinary.
It showed that prejudice and cruelty can be just as dangerous as any demon.
The show is saying that evil can take many forms.
And sometimes it's closer than we think. And what about Richard Ghana?
The guy who tried to kill David.
He was so creepy, using the online persona of Rose 390 to manipulate young girls.
That case highlighted the dark side of technology.
And how it can be used to exploit and harm others.
It's a reminder that we need to be careful about what information we share online.
And who we trust.
Yeah.
And the fertility clinic.
That was a huge revelation.
They might be tampering with embryos.
Potentially creating a generation that's more susceptible to temptation.
Especially when we learn that Kristen's daughter, Lexi, was born after treatment at that clinic.
It raises so many questions about the ethical implications of science.
And how far we're willing to go to control life itself.
It makes you wonder if Lexi could be affected by whatever's going on at the clinic.
And if that's why she's been acting out.
Yeah.
And then there's that shocking ending.
With Orson LaRue dying and Kristen seemingly getting burned by a crucifix.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Her.
It suggests that Kristen might be falling under some kind of demonic influence.
Which totally changes the game for season 2.
Seriously.
It makes you wonder if she'll be able to fight it off or if she'll embrace this darker side of herself.
And what does it mean for her relationship with David and the team?
This season was packed with twists and turns.
And it left us with so many questions.
It's a show that makes you think about good and evil, faith and science.
And the darkness that exists within us all, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's like the show is constantly asking us, what would you do if you were in their shoes?
Would you trust your gut, your faith, or the evidence?
Yeah, and it's not just about the big dramatic moments like the exorcisms or the visions.
It's the everyday choices we make, too.
The little compromises we might be tempted to make.
How those choices can lead us down a path we didn't intend to take.
Like when Kristen considered helping that woman fake demonic possession.
To win custody of her daughter?
That was messed up, but you could see why she was tempted.
Her intentions were good,
Right, she wanted to help this woman and her child.
but the method was morally questionable.
Exactly. It shows how good intentions can lead us astray if we're not careful.
And then there's David, struggling with his feelings for Renee.
He wants to be a good priest, but he's also human.
He has desires that conflict with his vows.
It makes you think about what it means to be a good person.
A person of faith, a person with morals.
Is it about being perfect all the time?
Or is it about recognizing our flaws and trying to do better?
Even when we fall short.
And Ben, even though he's a skeptic, he's starting to see that there might be more to the world than science can explain.
Like when he saw that weird image of his mother on the train tracks.
He couldn't explain that away.
It seems like every character is going through a crisis of faith.
In their own way.
Kristen's faith in science is shaken.
By the unexplainable.
David's faith in God is challenged by his own weaknesses.
And Ben's faith in logic is tested by the things he can't rationalize.
And the show doesn't give us easy answers.
It just keeps raising questions.
Makes us think and leaves us wanting more.
That's the power of good storytelling, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't preach or tell you what to think.
It just presents the complexities of life and lets you draw your own conclusions.
So heading into season 2, what are you most excited to see?
Everything. Will Kristen be able to resist the demonic influence?
Will David find a way to reconcile his faith with his desires?
Will Ben embrace the unknown or double down on his skepticism?
And what about Leland?
He's clearly not done causing chaos.
I have a feeling he's got some seriously diabolical plans up his sleeve.
I can't wait to see what twists and turns await us. I know I'm definitely on the edge of my seat.
Me too. So much is left unresolved.
What are you hoping to see in season 2?
Well, I'm really curious about Kristen's fate, after that encounter with the crucifix.
Right. Is she actually becoming possessed?
Or is there another explanation?
And if she is possessed, will she be able to fight it?
Or will she succumb to the darkness?
That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
And what about David?
Will he be able to resist his feelings for Renee?
Can he stay true to his vows?
Or will his desires ultimately lead him astray?
And what about Ben?
Will he finally accept that there are things beyond our understanding?
Or would he cling to his skepticism even in the face of the supernatural?
I also want to see more of Leland's master plan.
Yeah. What's his endgame?
He's clearly manipulating everyone around him.
But to what purpose?
I have a feeling he's just getting started.
Season 1 was just the tip of the iceberg.
I can't wait to see what the writers have in store for us.
Me neither. This show is so thought-provoking.
It really makes you question everything you think you know about good and evil.
And it's so well written and acted.
The characters are complex and relatable, even the ones who are doing terrible things.
And the scares are genuinely creepy.
It's the perfect blend of horror, drama, and mystery.
I can't recommend it enough.
So if you're looking for a show that will keep you on the edge of your seat and make you think evil is definitely worth checking out.
What moments or mysteries from season 1 are you still thinking about?
Let us know in the comments below.
And if you're enjoying these deep dives, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic.
Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep watching.